welcome. And just know I always appreciate any comments you might want to pencil in and just to know how you're reacting to this. And Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Amen.
And this is the screen share. Here we go. Excuse me. So, Uh, so we have baby Moses being put in a little basket and put on the river Nile. Vatitatsav achoto merachok. His sister placed herself at a distance, ladea, to know, me ya'aseh lo, what would happen to him, what would be done to him, literally. But what would happen to him? Let's see if there's anything here. Okay, so
No
there's nothing,
Rashi.
no Rashi on this. However, there is a Torah Tamima on it, and it's a lovely Torah Tamima. Vatitatsev achoto, right? So his sister placed herself. B'midah she'adam moded modadin lo. With the measure that a person measures, so they measure him. Example, Miriam himtina leMoshe, because Miriam was waiting for Moses, right, to see what happened to him. Excuse me one moment, let me take care of that. Lefichach himtinu la Yisrael b'midbar, and for that reason, the Jewish people, the Israelites, waited for her in the desert, in the wilderness. This refers to a story where she was stricken with leprosy for speaking ill of her brother, of Moses, and so it took 7 days for her to be cured. Once the leprosy was gone, it took another 7 days of cleansing, and it mentions, as they're going to say, Shneimar in Sof Parshat Bahalotcha, at the end of the Parsha of Bahalotcha, V'ha'am lo nasa, the people did not journey ad he'asef Miriam, until Miriam was gathered, in other words, back into the encampment, because if you were stricken with leprosy, you had to sit and dwell outside the encampment. You were basically put in quarantine. Umidah, and he goes on to say, Umidah tova, but however, any good quality that you do, any good measure, meruba, you're paid back even more, considerably more. For whatever good you do, you're paid back considerably more. Shehi himtina sha'achat, because she just waited for, sha'achat literally means 1 hour, but it just means for a little bit. She just waited to watch what happened for a little bit. The Israel himtinu la, but the Jewish people waited for her, Shiva Yamim, for 7 days. And this is from the tractate Sota. This tractate deals with this story quite a bit. There's a midrash in Sota on this particular passage. Page 60, please. Page 2 of it, page B. Okay, and apparently also page 11 on the A side of the page. So let's take a look at the Torah Tamima on that. So it says Ritzor lo lomar, what he's trying to say here, beneath what the statement, the simple statement, klal hatashlumin, that the general principle of tashlumin, that is compensation, midah keneged nidah, that is one thing for another. Noheg bein b'midah tova, it operates whether it has to do with a good quality or good measure, bein b'midat puranut, or whether a measure of tribulation, adversity. V'yitron lemidat tova, so in other words, if you do something wicked, you're going to be paid back. There's accountability, and it's just a statement regarding accountability. And it goes on to say that the point is that there is an advantage, v'yitron, the advantage of lemidat tova, of doing good, shemishalmin schar betosefet v'yitron, that when they pay back, there is additional benefit, and again, yitron means again over an abundance. Al hamidah shemadat hadam, on whatever the person did, he gets paid or she gets paid considerably more back. Ukademish as is explained in the passage we just read. And he goes on to give us some other references. V'iyein od, and see further, lifanenu, before us, literally, in other words, what happened before, in the text before, but Parshat Noach, in the Parsha of Noah, but Pasuk, regarding the verse that says, Va'arubot hashamayim niftachu, and the windows of heaven were opened. Uve Tosafot, and I believe this is the Tosafot, the Rashi's grandchildren, the Sugya Khan, in this Sugya on page 11a, the reference he gave to page 11a. So, just thought it was worth sharing that with you, since there's no Rashi on this passage at all. So it's a very important principle, as you can imagine. Vatered bat Paro lerchotz al hayor, and the daughter of Pharaoh went down to bathe in the Nile. V'na'aroteha holchot al yad hayor, and her maidens were going or walking by the side of the Nile. Vatere, and she saw et hateva, she saw the box, the little box, betoch hasuf, amongst the reeds. Vatishlach et amata vatikacheha, and the shot of this word would be, she sent her maidservant and took it, she took it, the box. So let's take a look at there's quite a bit of Rashi on this. So lirchotz al hayor, to bathe, literally it means on the river, right? So he says, Sares Hamikra, rearrange the verse, Ufarshehu, and that way you can explain it. So let's take a look. All right. Okay. Because this Al Hayor actually seems to be out of place. So this is what he's going to say. Vatered bat Paro al Hayor. What it is that she went down to the river, Lirchotzbo, to bathe in it. And so the order of the words here is a little bit peculiar. Al Yad Hayor, so this is of course referring to her maidens. Etzel Hayor. So next to just Al Yad, he's explaining this idiom Al Yad, on the hand, literally, or on the arm. Aval hayor, Eitzel hayor. What it means is near the Yaor, near the Nile. And he gives an example, Kamor, in Samuel 2, second book of Samuel, chapter 14. Re'u chelkat Yoav, see the portion of Yoav al Yadi, is next to mine. V'hu lashon yad mamash, and he's saying that you can really look at it as literally the arm or the hand, sheyad ha'adam smuchalo, because in other words, it's taken from the fact that the hand, a person's hand, is attached to him. So then he uses that in a way as a introduction to a different approach. V'rabotenu darshu, and our sages interpreted, and here we go, Sota. Remember, this is the tractate where this is discussed. Holchot lashon mita. The fact that it says her maidens holchot, right? That it specifies that they were going lashon mita. It has the connotation of death. Kamo hine, as it says, hine anochi holech lamut. This is what Esau said to Jacob when he came back from the field famished and he needed the pottage that Jacob was preparing, and he says, why does he need the Bechorah? Why would he need the privilege of the firstborn, the Bechorah? And he introduces that by saying, Hane anochi holech lamut. He says, I'm about to die, right? I'm going to die. And that's, of course, in Bereshit, in Genesis chapter 25. Holchot lamut, and why were they going to die? Lefi shemichu ba, because they tried to prevent her from rescuing Moses, from taking this. So again, this sort of stuff tends to raise questions for me as to the significance of this. I mean, beyond the fact that it appears to, and it's gonna, and it's he's gonna support this interpretation. Okay, I'll just finish up the Rashi. V'hakatuv misayan. This scripture supports this rabbinic interpretation. Hilama lanu lichtov, because what does this verse add? Why do we need to write v'narote holchot? What was the purpose of this? What is it trying to inform us? And so this is an interpretation, but again, on a superficial level, simply to say how this was sort of destined to happen. That God was going to make sure this happened, and if they were getting in the way, they weren't going to make it. That's how important it was. So it's not so much an issue of, so as far as I'm concerned, about divine justice, as rather trying to give, even though it's in a negative way, a positive statement as to how this wasn't coincidence. There's nothing coincidental about what was happening here.
Where in the passage though did he pull out the fact that they tried to prevent her from taking Moses? I maybe I missed it, but
No, we haven't gotten to it. It's okay.
Okay.
I'll explain.
Okay.
So it goes on to say vatere, which refers to Pharaoh's daughter. In other words, she saw it. Okay, and the emphasis that she saw it. Okay, and that she had to send her. Again, we're going to have an interpretation of this too. Okay, the fact that she's doing all of this, she opens it up, she does it, and her maidens don't do it. Her servants don't do this. Okay, she had to actually send her maidservant to go and get it. They weren't interested in doing it. But you're right. I mean, it's subtle, and it's not. He simply says there's some support in the fact he's using an argument from the fact that this is there more than anything else. And the fact that this phrase holchot, why dafka, the choice of this, it isn't needed at all. It could have said v'narotea al yad hayor. We'd understand that. And her maidens were next to the river. Why do we need dafka, this word holchot? Okay, that's the basis of this drush. And as it is, I mean, it's not necessarily a compelling drush. The issue is there any support for being able to interpret that? And the fact that this particular verb is used in this connection. So again, I don't feel I'm giving you an adequate answer, David, but I think that what I'm trying to do is at least open some doors here regarding what is this? There's some greater message that's being said here, I think, that's trying to be drawn out of the text. At any rate, yeah, go ahead.
No, got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So it says that she sent et amata, and the pshat would be her maidservant. And he says et shivchata. So shivcha is another word we use for maidservant. And again, v'rabotenu darshu, and our sages made a midrash on this, lashon yad. So the word ama, right, can also refer to one of your, like your arms, basically your arms or your legs. In other words, one of your appendages. Okay. aval lefi dikduk lashon hakodesh. And here, so it's interesting. So in the first case where Rashi quoted a Rabotenu Darshu, he says there's some support for it. Here he says that if you look at grammar, Hebrew grammar carefully, Hebrew grammar, Lashon HaKodesh, right, the holy tongue, it doesn't support it. So I have a feeling that's intentional. That we have on the one hand the support, and now we have the argument against. Right. So he explains, Haya lo lehinaked amata mem degusha. The mem of amata should have been. Here's the amata. Et amata should have had a dagesh, should have had a dot in it, and I'm going to guess then in that case it would not be a chataf. This is called a chataf patach. This is essentially, again, the aleph is a guttural letter. A guttural letter cannot sustain a regular shavah. And so it's essentially, depending on the nature of the word itself, it's going to take what is called a chataf, a grabbed patach. So it should actually be ummata, but in a case of the word amata referring to her limb, okay, that's what amma can mean, all right, as a limb, it should have been with a patach, and then in that case, this would have had a dagesh in it. So he's saying that's if it meant in fact limb, it should have had been spelt differently. It would have been the text would have been pointed differently. Okay, so here we go. Vehem darshu et amata et yada. Okay, so they interpreted et amata, what we said on a pshat level meant her maidservant, et yada, that it refers to her hand. Venishtar vava amata amot harbe, that her hand stretched out a lot of cubits. Look at this word amot, because the word amma also means a cubit. So in other words, so then it says she sent forth her amma, right? She sent forth her hand, is what they're saying, and they're saying that this amma that they're also trying to suggest that her hand stretched out. Now again, taking that literally, it starts to we start to question an issue of credulity. But again, I don't think we are supposed to be taking this in a literal sense. I think we're supposed to take it in a literary sense, meaning what this would connote is how badly she wanted to do it. That she really, really, that this was so important to her. In other words, what the rabbis are bringing out is the degree to which she wanted to save baby Moses.
I think that I may have seen like an artistic rendering, maybe a painting of this, where it shows the Pharaoh's daughter kind of sitting by the side of the bank with her arm long,
Yes.
really long, reaching out, like,
Right. Right.
And so I guess if my memory serves, then that artist probably knew about this
Yes,
midrash.
I would agree. I would agree. Yes, for sure. So
I think the word amma, when it means a cubit, comes from the word amma when it means a forearm.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, because
Right.
that's the measure of
Right.
and in fact that's explained in my Rashi here in Chabad as a parenthetical note.
Right. Also, I think I'd like to mention is this clarifies without any doubt that here we have an Egyptian woman, right? She's not Israelite, and in our tradition, she is considered a tzaddiket. She is considered a righteous person. And in fact, we even have a name for her. She's called Bitya Bat Paro. Batya, that's her name. That is, she's daughter of God, and the idea is that she, in fact, took on the belief in one God, that she essentially became, if we're going to use an anachronistic expression, that she converted to Judaism. But I
have to
go ahead.
mention that there is a very good music group called Pharaoh's Daughter.
Yes.
And the woman who is at the head of it, and there's one that I particularly like that quotes the Torah related to this portion, I think. But anyway, her name is Batya.
Ah, interesting. Well, maybe that's how they got the name of the group. Who knows?
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm sure.
yeah.
I'm sure she's a knowledgeable person, and they have like trope in it, and
Mm,
in at least this one album.
mm,
It's really
interesting.
nice album.
I guess what I'm trying to draw out is the fact that she is not of Israelite extraction, and yet she is considered to be a righteous person. That there is a sense of it's not that these are elements of universality within the tradition and within our rabbinic tradition. That it isn't just particularistic, and that it also allows that there's a much more universal way of looking at things, and that this would be such an example. That it has to do with what you do and not so much of how you're born, but what do you actually do with it? So being born a certain way is an invitation. Whether you accept the invitation or not is a different question. But your character and your how you're judged is dependent on what you do with your life. So
Yeah.
And,
Rabbi,
and this may go ahead,
Mhm.
Harlan.
I was going to say that she followed Moses to the Mount Sinai.
that's what I
She followed
understand
him.
too. I think you're right, Harlan. I think there is a tradition that essentially she left Egypt along with the Israelites. So
Exactly.
she gave up her exalted position as daughter in the court and chose to go along with the Israelites when they left. We'll take a little bit more here.
So that maybe
Yeah,
means
go
it
ahead.
wasn't just maternal instinct, but she was particularly drawn to Moshe.
Yes, yes, that and his teachings and his teachings. Vatiftach, so she opened it up. Vatirehu, and she saw him, et hayeled. So this is actually Hebrew style because it means so putting a suffix here, a pronominal suffix. That's what this would be called. The pronoun is him, right? And it's a suffix. So vatirehu means she saw him, and then it says et hayeled. Then it defines what the him is. That is the child. And normally that's what we'd understand this, but you'll see that the rabbis again, pounce on this and really interpret it beautifully, I think. Vehine na'ar boche. And the word na'ar generally means a young man, right? And behold, a young man crying. V'tachmol alav. And she had took pity on him. Vatomer, and she said, or she thought, right? Miyaldei ha'ivrim, from the children of the Hebrews. Ze is this one. This one is one of the children of the Hebrews. When you think about society and our modern society and what's going on these days in terms of how people are judged and groups are judged, etc., etc., I think there's a lot to unpack here regarding its application to modern day society and how we judge other racial groups and things like that. Okay. So at any rate, Vatiftach, she opened, Vateraehu, and she saw him. Et mi ra'ata. So Rashi gives you the pshat to begin with, right? What did she see? Hayeled. Zehu pshuto. He says this is the pshat. She saw the child. And here we go. Umidrasho, however the midrash is, shira'ata imo shchina, that she saw the divine presence with him. And that's Shemot Rabbah and Sota again. Sota, remember, we're quoting Sota quite a bit. So literally they're understanding because the word et, while it normally is untranslatable and normally is understood as introducing a direct object, what did she see? She saw the child, right? The word et very often, or often enough, can actually mean with. So she saw him, that is the Shekhinah, with the child. That's how they're parsing this out to get this interpretation. So here we're getting a lovely example of how our tradition looks at the Hebrew text and tries to squeeze out all possibilities of meaning from what is considered a sacred text. So again, what is this saying, right? That she saw something divine about this, and that she, again, I think that, this gives you something to think about in terms of how you unpack this particular thought here. Vehine na'ar b'cho. And here, this verse is just filled with implications, right? Because it doesn't say vehine tinok bocher, right? Here, a baby is crying, or it doesn't say vehine yeled bocher, and it doesn't even say, and behold, a child is crying. It uses the term na'ar, which generally refers to youth, right? A youth, and so Rashi does this with it. Kolo kanar. His voice was like a voice of a young man. That's how we understand this. And I'm going to stop right here. And let's see what I can do. Right, we'll just...
About the word et,
Yes, go
I
ahead.
thought I remember reading or hearing this once, and I may be misremembering, but it's kind of a word that can be seen as superfluous. In other words, if you take it away, you still get the same meaning. And I thought that I'd read that can also, because it's not needed, it can imply this extra presence, which might be a mystical presence.
Yes. There are times when they understand the word "et" to mean including something. I never actually sort of understood it as being superfluous, because generally it removes any ambiguity regarding whether this is a direct object or not. I mean, that's essentially, it's a utility word. We don't have any equivalent, as far as I'm aware of, in English for this particular word, so often it gets untranslated. But I would say within Hebrew, it's not superfluous. It has that utility. Golda?
Yeah, I was thinking instead of with, what about as?
I don't know that I've ever seen it have that mistake. I
But
mean,
it's
she
sort
saw
of,
she saw the divine presence with the child. That's how they're understanding it.
or,
Not the divine presence
okay,
as the child. I think that would be a different religion.
okay. Or within, so within as
No,
opposed, no,
I
not
don't.
just
Oh, I
next
see what
to,
you're
yeah.
saying. I see
Yeah,
what you're
yeah, yeah,
saying.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I think you could push that a little bit, but
yeah.
if you wanted to get away from a more, from being overly literal about it. But I mean, the
Yeah, I
issue
don't
is
want to
that
see
she
three
did see the...
people or, two people in this box,
Well, you're not two people. She sensed the
Right,
divine presence in that
correct.
box, and then if you
Okay,
want to sort of look at it in the way you're interpreting it, I don't have any problem with that.
okay.
But yeah.
No,
But
I
It's
the
like
not
issue is
within.
dualitarian.
yeah, right, exactly.
I got so
So
many notes around this section.
we're
It's
going to
such a
stop
mess.
here. I'm going to stop the recording, and I hope everyone enjoyed it.